Hello everyone. So this is another episode where we are talking about, drain of wealth and deindustrialization. So the thing is that both are very, connected in terms of the colonial history, but both are not actually the very similar. You can say that if drain of wealth was a process, then deindustrialization was one of the, important outcome of drain of wealth. So, to have a brief overview of the concept and what are the theoretical developments and also some of the statistics that has been shown by historians, we will focus on that. So, to further proceed, so it's very important to understand that what is the concept of colony in order to have a conception of the drain of wealth. You must understand that what is colonialism, because drain of wealth is very peculiar to British colonialism, to colonialism as a economic process. Because drain of wealth means that there is a metropole, that is their own country, that is the Britishers own country, and there is colony, that is India and other part of their indirect colonies and also direct colonies like India. So the thing that is very peculiar in terms of British colonialism is that unlike the Mughals or unlike any kind of pre-colonial or pre-modern powers, the Britishers were actually they were squeezing the money, they were taking the wealth from Indian subcontinent through irregular trades and through other revenue collection, etc., and they were actually kind of exporting or draining the wealth to their own country, that is metropole, that is England. So that why this is very unlike the Mughals, because Mughals came, and also the Delhi Sultanate, they came, but they kind of settled in India. They had their own bases, political structure, whatever it is, but it was within the boundary, within the territory of India, Indian subcontinent. So whatever the Mughals were spending, whether they were spending on palaces or in the parks or in their luxurious living, but it was within the territory of India. So it kind of created employment for the Indian people, for the indigenous people. So that is one of the major economic differentiation that is happening, that in terms of colony, in terms of colonialism, drain of wealth is happening, that is channelizing the whole process in which the wealth has been exported to their own country, that is to England. This drain of wealth, as an economic process, it started in 1757, and it kind of carried 6 million euros between 1758 to 1765. So just within 7 years span, they were exporting 6 million euros, which is huge. And this statistics is kind of excluding the illegal trade profit. And these kind of things were called investment by East India Company, that is buying Indian goods with their indigenous revenue connection. As you can see that after the British kind of captured the whole territory through warfare or through other means, they kind of introduced new revenue system, that is Rayatwari, permanent settlement, Mahalwari, and through this, the whatever revenue they were collecting, they were actually investing them to buy Indian goods. So it is kind of buying Indian goods with Indian money. And one of the main thing of this drain of wealth is that there were mainly exports, not imports. So this is also you can understand that how the kind of export trade was only happening, import trade, which was also very thriving during the pre-modern period, during the pre-colonial period, but after the coming of British, it was no more, right? And if we can actually look at a very interesting remark of John Sullivan, that is who was president of Board of Revenue of Madras, that is in Madras presidency. He said that our system works very much like a sponge, drawing up all the good things from the banks of the Ganges and squeezing them down on the bank of Thames. So he, within these few words, he totally explained or described how colonialism works. And this is what I was saying in the previous slide, that it kind of acted as a sponge. You are plucking things from Indian subcontinent and then exporting all the good things into your own country, that is England. So that is basically drain of wealth, the very core idea of drain of wealth. Now, what is the consequences of drain of wealth? It is deindustrialization. And what is the core thesis? The injurious effect of British factory made goods into Indian cotton textile. As you all know, that industrial revolution, how it created power loom and technological development in England. So the factory made goods, which were fine in quality and also very less in terms of price, that was flooding the market of India, and Indian indigenous cotton textiles that could not be sold. So Indians lost employment in their own industries. There was disappearance of handloom weaving, because how handloom weaving will thrive if there are factory made goods which are cheaper, which are higher in good in quality. And Amyo Kumar Bakchi, one of the important economic historian, he said that he showed how influx of British products like cotton and silk industry that kind of affected the Gangetic Bihar, the indigenous industry in Gangetic Bihar, that saw a decline because British produced cotton and silk and that came to India, and for as a consequence of that, the Indian products, they did not have any demand anymore. So only a strong business community survived in West India because the company could not penetrate that region until 1818. So if we can compare eastern region, eastern India and western India, we will see that in eastern India it was already Gangetic Bihar region, how it was facing a decline, the indigenous industry that was heavily affected by the British goods. But in West India, that the British could not actually conquer the territory until 1818. So that was the phase when the Western Indian trading communities like Marwaris, Punjabis, they could have certain amount of thriving trading activities till 1880s, because the British were nowhere in the scene. So that is a comparison that the historians are making. And if we look at other historians' views, Tirthankar Roy, he is a revisionist. And now to be very clear that what is revisionist. So there are nationalist historians, right, like R.C. Majumdar and etc. And also Dadabhai Nouraji, who first talked about this drain of wealth theory. So there is nationalist historians who are saying that deindustrialization is a very important historical reality and how British colonialism caused it. But there are also, on the other hand, revisionist historians who are saying that no, if deindustrialization happened, it was not only because of British colonialism, there were other factors to play their role. For example, Tirthankar Roy is a revisionist and he kind of focused on 5 Indian industries, like different sectors. One is handloom weaving, then gold thread, that is jari work, we say, the leather industry, brassware and the carpet industry. So by focusing on this distinct industrial sector, Roy argued that only a segment of cotton textile was affected by British competition. Okay, so he kind of he looked at multiple pockets of the industrial sectors and he said that only a segment, only a portion of it was affected, and the unemployed textile workers was compensated by increased employment in indigo, opium and saltpeter. So Tirthankar Roy is saying that if in spite of the fact that the cotton textile, indigenous cotton textile, their workers faced problem, their workers were unemployed, but they had alternative option, that is the indigo opium cultivation was there, and these textile workers, they got compensated when they were driven to these alternative sectors like indigo and opium cultivation. He found, Tirthankar Roy found that quality of South Asian soil was not suitable for industrialization. So Roy is saying that how not only British competition but other factors like the oriental geography and their environment like South Asian soil, that is not suitable for deindustrialization. So Tirthankar Roy is actually following the thesis of Maurice de Maurice, who also said that the weather instability, weather instability in kind of is responsible for the crop failure and other kind of drought situation that was coming up. So this is a very unique revisionist views where the British colonialism was not only held responsible, but the other factors like the geographical factors, which was thought to not very favorable for the industrialization, unlike the England circumstances. Now there is a recent Harvard study, like economist Klingsmith, Williamson, they also agreed that there was deindustrialization, but according to them it was not only for the British competition but also for the negative productivity shock in Indian economy due to Mughal decline. So this is a typical case where the revisionist historians and the recent studies are trying to connect the early modern period through this deindustrialization. They are saying that no, the British are not only responsible, but the Mughal decline, it all obviously had an adverse effect on the economy, and that kind of worsened the situation where deindustrialization happened. So this is the thing. Now if we briefly look at deindustrialization, there are two phases. The first phase is in between 1750 to 1810. In this phase we will see that how there is an indirect result of Mughal disintegration. Revenue farming expanded, as you know that during the later half of Mughal period after Aurangzeb, or during Aurangzeb, the Mughal territory was expanding. So the revenue farming got also expanded, and it created a burden on peasants because they had to pay more revenue. And economic burden of warfare was also there because the territories were getting expanded. That means it was obviously because of the warfare. So warfare always had an adverse effect on the economy. There was decline of inter-regional trades because this was the time in the 18th century India when the regional powers were coming up, right, after the death of Aurangzeb. So the regions were becoming more economically self-sufficient, and there was discouragement of the inter-regional trades because no regional king or they will want a collective unified trading routes because they will try to be prosperous in their own region. So there was decline of this inter-regional trades and decreased of agricultural productivity. So as a result of it, grain prices increased. This adversely affected wage workers and textile manufacturers because they had to buy the grain prices which were now more expensive. So this first phase, initial phase, it was thought that it was mainly because of Mughal disintegration, the Mughal decline, this whole deindustrialization was happening. And if we look at the later phase, that is from 1810, then the factory system in England, it came to play a role. Like introduction of factory system in England pushed down the prices of textile worldwide. For economists like Daniel Thorner, there was a slow reindustrialization from 1860. So Daniel Thorner is saying that if 1810 witnessed a deindustrialization due to British competition, then it kind of stopped in 1860 and then there was a reindustrialization. But historian Amyo Kumar Bagchi felt that there was never an end of deindustrialization, especially in 1860. Because jute, mining, these were some of the new industries that were coming up, but that could hardly compensate the unemployment, because the textile workers, as you already saw that how they were facing challenges to find a new job. So this is as you can see that Amyo Kumar Bagchi is kind of have a nationalist view, or his view is aligned towards nationalist view, but Daniel Thorner and previously Tirthankar Roy, Maurice D are kind of challenging this whole idea that deindustrialization was because of British competition. Now if we go further, this is very important, the commercialization of agriculture, because this is the one of the process by which this deindustrialization was happening. What is commercialization of agriculture? It is the production of cash crops. Cash crops, like opium, indigo, these are cash crops. I mean, these are the crops which had a worldwide demand. And commercialization of agriculture means that it is mainly driven by a very good railway system and everything, because once there are railway system, the British clerks and the British order, the colonial order, they were kind of more prone to collect crops from very remote region. So railway kind of it made easier the whole process of commercialization of agriculture. So now the peasants had to depend on cash crops to meet the increasing revenue demand, because for the Rayatwari, Mahalwari and permanent settlements, there the revenue demand already got increased, and in order to meet that demand, the peasants or the cultivators, they did not have any other option but to cultivate the cash crops, which had a very increasing demand in world market, right? Though these commercial crops proved to be very lethal, because it leaded to crop failure, it leaded to other problem in cultivation, but they had to do it, they did not have other choice, because these indigo and opium, tea, raw silk, coffee, these had a very vibrant market. So opium trade also leaded to indentured laborers. What is indentured laborers? That is the laborers from India who were exported to other British colonies. So like tea, raw silk and coffee, how these commodities were exported to other countries. Also likewise the laborers were also exported in inhuman condition. So these laborers were called indentured laborers, who were forced to go to other colonies, to other British colonies, and worked in a very exploitative situation. If you look at indigo cultivation, not only in Bengal but in Bihar's Champaran there was indigo cultivation, and India kind of slowly became a raw material supplier for Lancashire. So this has been suggested that how, because of this deindustrialization and commercialization of agriculture, India was no more an importer. He was always an exporter or supplier of only raw material, not finished goods. So it has been said that the combined force of indigenous culture means the Mughal disintegration and the kind of discouragement of intertrade connection. So these indigenous economic factors as well as colonial exploitation, both was responsible for this deindustrialization. And what is the main consequences of deindustrialization is the rampant famine during this 19th century India. There was crop failure, because they had to produce cash crops, which leaded to soil erosion and etc., but they had no other choice. So 1818 famine commission report, they said that the worst affected because of this famine was the agricultural laborers and rural artisans, obviously. So the self-sufficiency, which was very important in pre-colonial time, that was no more because of this commercialization and because of this deindustrialization. So this is in a very sketchy way that to understand some of the important topics, and to also be able to remember these historians like Tirthankar Roy, Maurice D. Morris, because they are important theoreticians when you are talking about deindustrialization and drain of wealth. So thank you for watching. If you have any question, please put that in comment, and please subscribe to our channel. Thank you.